We are live this morning. Let's make sure everything's working. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Welcome. We haven't done this in a while. I'm been away on a long vacation,
I have done
so it's
this.
fun to do
You
our
haven't done
podcast.
this because you
This is
left
true.
me.
This is true.
So, for those who don't know, Helene abandoned me and went to Italy for a month. So, she was out exploring the world while the rest of us were working.
I know it was really rough. I was making relationships.
Oh, right. I'm sure a lot of those Italians are going to buy houses in Texas.
Someday. Although after being there, I don't know why anybody would leave Italy and come here. I gotta say.
Yeah. No, I understand. Let's see how we are on a sound. Making sure everybody can hear us this morning. We are hoping we've improved our audio. Helene still sounds a little bit quiet. I don't know how that's always the case.
Oh no.
Just talk
Should
loud.
I talk a lot louder?
Yeah, maybe enunciate.
Okay, I will enunciate.
All
So,
right.
what's our topic today?
Well, thanks for joining us, everyone, or whoever's going to end up joining. Sarah says sound is better now. So, this morning we're doing Real Talk for Realtors. We have switched this to a monthly podcast just so that we can make sure we prepare better for the different topics that we want to go over with you each month. But we really do this for our realtors to provide you guys helpful information, to make sure that you guys feel that confident in what you're talking to your customers about. So if there's a topic that you feel like I really would love to know just a little bit more about this, feel free to share that with us and we'll put together that information for you. Either we know the information or we'll bring somebody on and interview them to give you some information on whatever topic it is that you feel like you're kind of lacking right now. Because we really want this to be a helpful tool for our realtor partners. So, this morning, kind of going off of that, one of the questions that we've been getting a lot recently is asking about temporary buy down. So, the 2-1 buy down, the 3-1 buy down, or 3-2-1 buy down. What is it? What does it do? There's a lot of confusion around it because of the word buy down. It sounds like it's the same as just buying the interest rate down, and it is very different. And so this morning, we really wanted to go over that with everybody and kind of get into a little bit more detail. So when your customers ask about it, you have some idea of kind of what's involved, and there's some requirements on your part potentially if we're going to try to get money from the seller. Understanding what we're shooting for here. So to get going this morning, you know what? We introduced the podcast, but we didn't introduce ourselves.
Maybe we should do that.
We're sort of awake this morning, guys. So I'm Michelle Long with Academy Mortgage. This is Helene Springer with Academy Mortgage. We've been partnered now for 7 years. We disagree sometimes on how long it's been. And so we just really love helping our realtors and our borrowers be educated in the process. We're big on education. And we really want to partner with our realtors. And so that's where this came out of. So, Helene, what is a 2-1 buy down or a 3-2-1 buy down?
So, 2-1 buy down, it's something that's actually been around for a long, long time. My husband and I did a 2-1 buy down on our first home in 1983. So, it's been around for a while. And it is a tool that gets used when rates go up to help a buyer slowly edge into a higher payment. So right now, so many buyers are in sticker shock that rates are in the sevens and even low eights. And so what this does is a temporary lowering of the interest rate. So the payment that they make for the first on a 2-1 buy down, the first year the payment is based on a rate 2% below whatever the start rate is. So if the rate's 7.5%, the start rate would be 5.5%. Then the next year it goes to 6.5%, and then the third year it bumps up to um, the full rate of 7.5. So that buyer's had a chance to kind of grow into that rate. So the buyer still has to qualify for the higher rate. They just will make a payment based on the lower.
You're answering too many of my questions in one question.
I'm sorry.
So that answers if it's been around for a while. Um, so who pays for the buy down and how much does it cost?
So the seller typically pays for it, but there is, and you'll have to ask us about this for more detail, the buyer can pay for it, but it's a little bit of why would they do that. But the buyer could also pay for a portion of it if the seller doesn't want to do the whole thing.
Yep.
And it costs, one is 1% of the loan amount. So if it's a $200,000 loan amount, it will cost $4,000 or 2%.
Well, I think that one kind of depends. So my understanding has been what you're paying is the difference in the payment.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of an
But
easier
that's
way to
how
think
it
of it.
pretty much works out.
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
kind of works out to the number, but the exact number is they're going to take whatever your payment would have been at 7.5% minus 5.5, what your payment is at 5.5%, and that difference times 12 months for the first year, and then 7.5 minus the 6.5% payment times 12 months for the second year. That's how much we're collecting up front. So it's really a prepayment. I think makes it a lot
Yes.
easier to understand. When we're talking about the difference between a temporary buy down and a permanent buy down, a permanent buy down means you bought the rate down and this is your permanent payment forever. You bought a lower rate. A temporary buy down is really a bad way of explaining it because it's just you prepaying. You prepaid 2 years parts of your payment. So,
Yes.
which kind of goes into what happens to that money? Where does it go? So, normally a buy down, you're going to pay for it, it buys the rate down, and then that's the end of that. On a temporary buy down, that money that we've used to buy it down, what happens to that money? How does that, what does that money do?
So let's say you've lived in the house for a year. So you've had that first year buy down, and now it's the second year, and you refinance or you sell. That amount that's been prepaid will lower the principal that's due at that time. So you don't lose that money. And it converts from being applied to prepaid interest to buying down the principal.
The remainder,
So
not
it
the full amount.
is the remainder, right? Um, so, and if I'm getting ahead, tell me. But right now, I think with everyone saying we should see a refinance market, historically, market trends are saying we should see a refinance market in the next 24 months. Well, that plays in perfectly with using that 2-1 buy down. So you're getting their rate down now, and then when the refinance market happens, then they can go into a lower rate permanently. And if it happens earlier rather than later, they're not losing money by going ahead and refinancing. They get it back.
Gotcha. Because if we're doing a permanent buy down, if you buy that rate down, and let's say you spent $8,000 to buy the rate down, you really wanted to lower it. If you refinance in 2 years, you're losing that $8,000. You've gained a little bit because your payment was
If you
obviously
haven't
lower.
broken even yet,
Yeah, if you haven't broken
yeah,
even yet, you're going to lose whatever was left over. But on a temporary buy down, one thing that I think helped make more sense to me is the money is actually set in an escrow account. So that prepayment amount, it's basically another little bank account that the mortgage company sets up that they set all that money in. And so every month when your payment comes in, they're taking a portion out of it to make up the difference in your payment. So that's how it's reducing. And so then that's why there's money left to pay down your balance when you go to refinance. Because, if you do it in a year, you haven't used up all of that little bank account. and now you can take the remainder of that money and pay down your balance. So that is kind of an interesting
Exactly.
difference for sure. So most of the time we talk about this, the seller's paying for it. We talked about the buyer can pay for it, but why would you? You're just prepaying your payment. But why would a seller offer to pay the buy down?
I think for listing agents, this is a great tool to offer to distinguish your house versus lowering you have a house that's not moving, and it's better to do this than to lower the sales price. And I'll give you a great example of a realtor who called me the other day. He had a listing that was not really moving, but he had somebody really interested in it, but they were a little uncomfortable with the payment. They qualified for it, but the payment was just high. So by the seller offering to do this 2-1 buy down, it got that payment down into their comfort zone, and the seller didn't have to lower the price. Now, and it made more the difference to the buyer. If the seller had lowered the payment, it was a $500,000 house. If the seller had lowered the price $10,000, it would have only lowered the buyer's payment $50. But if the seller gave that same $10,000 to the buyer for the 2-1 buy down, it actually lowered his payment that first year over $300. That
Wow.
was huge to this buyer.
Yeah.
So it was the difference between feeling like they could buy the house or not, because they knew within a couple of years their income was going up, and also maybe they could refinance. So they just needed to get on the sticker shock today, and that they made an offer on the house that is under contract now.
That's awesome. Um, so what type of loans can do a buy down? Can you do it on everything?
So used to be FHA was the only one that allowed it, but now we can do those buy downs on FHA, conventional, and I'm thinking VA as well. I'm not 100% positive. VA kind of a different animal. People don't seem to need it as much. They're more after the zero down payment, so
Yeah.
that's more their offering. But I believe you can do it on VAs as well.
So the only caveat that I'm aware of that we can't do the loan on would be down payment assistance. And the only reason, the
Yep.
down payment assistance, you're already getting money for a higher rate. So it doesn't make sense. Like the first thing you would do would be to stop taking the assistance and get a lower rate. And then if you still had more money, then we would go potentially, now we switch to a standard loan and do a buy down. So if you do have a client with down payment assistance, they could still totally use seller concessions, but what they're going to be doing is reducing their rate by removing down payment assistance rather than doing a 2-1 buy down in that particular scenario. So
Yep.
if a buyer now has got a house, the seller says, "Hey, I'm willing to pay to do your buy down for you." Um, does that help them qualify for more house, or what do we have to do there?
So it does not. They have to qualify at the full rate. So if the rate's 7.5, they're going to have to qualify at 7.5. So this is really better for that buyer who qualifies for more. They're just uncomfortable paying it. If they need the lower payment to qualify, then we've got to use the money to just flat out buy the rate down. Um, Generally, I find that if the 2-1 buy down takes you from 7.5 to 6.5, excuse me, 7.5 to 5.5, those same 2 points will get your 30-year rate to the middle of that, the 6.5 number. It's not exact, but that's kind of where I've seen it falling, is that the actual rate you can buy down to permanent is about right in the middle.
In the
So
middle.
somebody may just need that to qualify.
Gotcha. And so are there any cons to doing a buy down, and is there a better solution?
Well, when I was first it's not being introduced, but when we first saw these coming back on the market, which was early this year and late last year, to me the con was, well, 2 points, we can just buy the rate down. You don't get it as far, but it's permanent because who knows when we'll see refinances. Now that we're getting within a window of a refinance market within 1 to 2 years, I think the 2-1 buy down actually makes more sense because you get that money back and you can apply it to your principal so you don't lose it. Where if you, as we talked a minute ago, if you actually bought the rate down fixed for 30 years, and then within a year we have a refinance market, and your break even point was 3 years, well, you lose that. So I think it's beginning to make more sense to do the temporary buy down than the permanent one.
So what it sounds like is if you think that you're going to be able to, or that we're going to be in a market to refinance before you hit your max rate on the buy down again, or you think you're going to sell for some reason or refinance before that time period, then the temporary buy down makes more sense. If you think that we're not going to be refinancing, or you're not going to be able to refinance within that 3 year period or 2 year period, depending which one you select, then the permanent buy down makes more sense because you want your rate in the future to stay lower. Does that sound about right?
Exactly right.
Perfect.
That sounds exactly right.
Anything else about the buy down that you can think of we haven't gone over?
I think that about covers it. We've been talking 2-1 because that's the most common.
Yep.
There is a 1-1 buy down and there's a 3-1 buy down. So again, you just have to look at the math, what you've got available from the seller to use, and it's all about the math, what makes the most sense.
Yeah.
But there is a flexibility even in the buy down.
Well, and I think it's also going to be, it's different from customer to customer as well. So, we may believe that the refinance market is going to hit in the next, 2 years. But let's say right now you guys are dual income and you both qualify. But, the one of you is planning on potentially quitting their job in the next year and taking care of kids, and your income's going to cut in half, and you don't know if you're going to be able to, on paper, qualify for the loan at that point. Then we may want to buy down more permanently. If you think something's coming up in the future that's going to prevent you from on paper being able to, or you're going to start a brand new business we can't count, or do something a little bit more unique. So your situation can also help determine whether or not we should be doing a temporary or a permanent buy down. And that's where I think for realtors, have your customers really discuss that with us as your loan officer on what is your current circumstance, where do you see yourself in 2-3 years, so that we can help plan for the right program. And then for buyers coming, same thing, letting us know what do you think is coming down the road for you, so we can kind of help advise which way might make more sense for you.
Well, and I think what you just talked about is the difference between the big box internet lenders who are order takers. They are not going to sit and have the conversation with the customer about what is your plan for the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And those things really need to be considered. A loan should be designed to fit the financial picture of your financial future, and you don't know all, or the customer doesn't know all the questions to ask, and that's where we as loan professionals can take them through that. So if there's ever a reason to not use one of the big box lenders, that's it right there.
For sure.
Maybe there's something better you can do for your future if you knew the right questions to ask.
Yep. A good loan officer is half loan officer and half financial advisor.
Financial planner, yep.
Yep. And so if your loan officer is not talking with you about the future, if they're just like, oh yeah, you wanted FHA, here's FHA, bye, then I highly recommend a new loan officer, because they should be having a more intense conversation with you. And obviously I highly recommend us, but no, not everybody will go with us.
Well, yesterday I had someone call me that was wanting to get pre-approved to buy an investment property. That was not a good move for her, or for she and her family. A huge mistake. And where we ended up with, we'll see if they follow through with it, but I just showed her the math as actually selling the house they're in, even though they have a 3% interest rate. There's another house that is she's looking at that has a back unit she can rent.
Mm,
And I just showed her the difference in the math of sell your house, buy that house, puts them in a whole different position. But if I was just that order taker, I would have just pre-approved her to do the investment property because that's what she called to ask me.
right.
So, that's the difference
And
right
then she
there.
would have still been in her primary residence that she was okay with, but wanted something different. And now she's getting an
Yep.
upgrade in the primary residence and has an investment property. Yeah, that's awesome. So, well,
And the
oh,
realtor who sent her to me is thrilled
oh yeah,
that to
yes,
the listing and selling one of her listings.
yes, yeah. So, which kind of brings us to, if you've got clients out there that you'd like us to kind of talk with, um, one, we really do love to educate our customers and go through all of this with them. So we help them really understand what their options are, why they might be, might do one versus the other. We're never going to force their hand if they want to do something that we're like, well, I probably wouldn't do that myself, but okay. But we'll give them the option so they make sure that they're educated in what they're choosing. But the other big thing is we do really want to partner with our realtors. So our goal is not just to take leads and move on. We're trying to grow your business as well. Make sure that we're keeping track of those clients, sending them back to you when it's time is right. I mean, we've had clients that we've worked with for 2 or 3 years. They came to us. We put together a plan. We said, well, you just started a brand new self-employed job. I need 2 years of tax returns. While you're working on that, let's work on your credit. And 2 years later, they were finally ready. We bring them back to our realtor, and the realtor goes, "Who?" um,
Who?
because they've forgotten, but we haven't, and we've kept
Yep.
up with them, and we know that they came from you and are bringing them back. So that's what we really try to do with our realtors. So feel free to reach out if there's any other ways that we can be helping you. Also, we'd love new topics. If there's things that you are interested in, we really want this to be for our realtors. So let us know what you're interested in learning about, and we'll make sure we put that together. One other thing we've
Yep.
got coming up in January, we have a T-Shack CE class that's going to be available. So I'll be teaching that one. I think I'm teaching it in Mansfield, but now I've completely forgotten. But it's on our Facebook page that you can find the event and go sign up for it. Even if you've taken a T-Shack class already, we highly recommend going ahead and taking it again because what a lot of people don't realize is T-Shack actually will list you as a realtor on the T-Shack website if you've taken their class annually. So they reset every single year. So if you take the class in January, that means that you're going to be on their website for the full year. And we actually get a decent amount of leads from T-Shack because we're listed on the T-Shack website. I'd say, probably a couple a month that are reaching out. And they're not all down payment assistance leads. I had somebody the other day that was like, this is a 20% down conventional loan. T-Shack does not make sense for them, but it was from the T-Shack website. And then we have, plenty that are T-Shack down payment assistance, but from the class you'll learn that's not necessarily the end of the world. That's actually can be some really good clients. So highly recommend taking that class. It's free. You don't have to pay anything, and Grace Title is offering free lunch. So even better. Anything else we need to go over before we close out today?
I think we about covered it.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Bye, everyone.
Bye.